What is biofilm?
Biofilms are very well-structured layers of microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms that form in wet places. In your house, you might notice, for example, mold in your shower. You might notice slime in a wet place in your garden. They're also biofilms, these complex organized layers that are basically defense systems for bacteria. Dental plaque is a biofilm that we all know very well, and we also struggle with trying to remove it really well. And in fact, there's some really nice parallels between the problems of dental plaque and the problems of biofilms when they're in medical and dental equipment.
What are the findings from research in terms of water quality in dental water lines?
Over the past 25 years, we've done a range of field studies measuring levels of bacteria in water in dental practices across the east coast of Australia. What we've actually found is very consistent with what's been reported in the literature previously for the United States, for Europe, and for the UK. And that is that in dental practices that do no active treatment, no flushing, no chemical additives to the water, the levels of bacteria in the water exiting the water lines is incredibly high and well above the threshold level of 200 colony forming units per mil, which is recommended by the Australian Dental Association, and that is used as a guide to medical water quality. We've also found variations between brands of dental chair, we've found variations between different protocols for chemical actives, and we've found that when practices are doing continuous chemical treatment and they're also doing some periodic shock treatment and they're monitoring, their levels are in fact incredibly low and they're meeting the requirements. But we're talking really only about 1 in 5 practices. So most practices are not looking, and they're not probably aware they've actually got the problem in the first place.
Why is it important to test your water lines on a regular basis?
With different types of tubing and different types of designs inside a dental chair and different quality of water being fed in, we have a fairly complex system that we need to individually measure the performance of. So each practice in each location with different climate, different qualities of water being fed in is its own little experiment. So if you don't actually test the individual chair in your practice, you simply won't know how it's performing.
Why is it important to do a shock treatment?
Shock treatments are designed to detach and break up biofilm, whereas continuous chemical treatments are designed to slow down or suppress the growth of bacteria. Once the bacteria and other organisms have formed into a complex biofilm, this is their natural way of protecting themselves. It's a little bit like people herding together to protect themselves from attacking forces. So bacteria are much more difficult to kill when they're in a biofilm. So we need a specific intervention to detach and break up the biofilm, and this is what a shock treatment actually does. It breaks the biofilm up physically so we can then rinse it through and leave a clean surface behind.
Can bleach solution then be considered a shock treatment?
While some people have used ordinary domestic bleach for a shock treatment, I've got some concerns with that. Research that my group has done has shown lots of problems with the stability of domestic bleach. For example, exposure to light, degradation because of temperature, and even just time. In other words, unless you test the available free chlorine in domestic bleach, you actually don't know if it's available or active at all. Unfortunately, domestic bleach is a bit of an unknown. When you get it, you don't even know how long it's been sitting in the warehouse or on the shelf at the supermarket. So it's a bit of an unknown. When we use a designated product designed for biofilm disruption and removal or shock treatment, we know it's chemically active. So the efficacy is predictable. Domestic bleach is not predictable. Also, it can interact with the control blocks found in some dental chairs and cause quite severe corrosion. So you wouldn't use it unless you actually were told by the manufacturer that it was compatible with your dental unit's control blocks.
Are we going to see some changes in terms of regulations around water testing with the new ADA guidelines?
The ADA guidelines are based on evidence, and when we review them, we take the latest evidence into account as we update and revise the guidelines. So in line with that, given a lot of recent evidence in the last 4 or 5 years about bacterial levels in dental unit water lines, we've recommended that people start to measure, and if they find from measuring that the levels are high, that they then intervene with a shock treatment and then measure again. By doing this, you can actually individually sort out the correct protocol for each chair in your practice. The water line that's used the least in the chair that's used the least in your practice will have the worst biofilm. So that's a logical place to start testing. Go for the area where we know the biofilm problem is going to be the greatest. So we talk about a protocol around testing and then bringing back a shock treatment and then retesting as part of the internal regular monitoring and maintenance of a chair in a dental practice. This is something which we've not talked about very much in previous guidelines, but I think it's a very good and important addition to what we should be doing to ensure the quality of dental practice in Australia.
The microbial count of liquids is measured in CFU per milliliter. The results you see on the surface of the slide after the incubation period show the population of the colony-forming units. Based on this pattern formed, we can determine if the colonies are exceeding the recommended limits or not. Once we know the count, we can establish if our water lines are within the accepted range or if there is an overgrowth of the biofilm. If the agar-agar dip slide shows the overgrowth of the biofilm, we need to remove biofilm using the biofilm removing system, commonly known as shock treatment. First, we start with the pre-cleaner to break the matrix of the biofilm and loosen up the colonies of the microorganisms. Pre-cleaner is mixed with hot water at approximately 50 degrees Celsius. Then pour the solution into your treatment water bottle systems. Run the solution through the dental unit water lines until it comes out of the instrument ends, and then leave for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, the product is flushed out. For flushing the whole dental unit water lines, pull the instrument tubes and press the foot switch. Continue the intermittent flushing until the reddish rinsing solution comes out clear pink and without any visible residues. We are ready for the step 2 remover of the biofilm. For the main cleaning, dissolve the contents of the BRS remover in 2 litres of hot water, approximately 50 to 60 degrees Celsius. Run it through the instruments as done with pre-cleaner and let it sit in the system for 20 minutes. Intermediate flushing of the water lines until the clear blue solution comes out without any residue. Now when biofilm is out, we are ready for the final disinfection of the water lines. Now that the tubes have been cleared, it's time to disinfect them. Pour approximately 200 ml of Bilpron into the water bottle system. Flush through the instruments until you visibly see it come out of the tube ends. With this, leave disinfection in the tubing for at least 12 hours. Once time is up, flush out instruments with clean water until no blue residue is evident.